Welcome back to another episode of the CRM Show, the Chris Rod Max Show. We have my co-host with me today, Chris Rod. Welcome back.
Hey guys.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Cool. I think this week we have quite a lot of, I would say, quite a lot of development going on. Last week we obviously have the inauguration. This week we saw the drop of DeepSeek, which we're going to spend a little bit of time to talk about DeepSeek. And then obviously at the back of DeepSeek, everyone in the West kind of went a little bit haywire. From OpenAI claiming DeepSeek trained its model with OpenAI's model, all the way down to someone talking about how ChatGPT wrapper was actually the way to go, where it was previously condemned because it's just a wrapper. So let's without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so first one, I think this is the story of the week. Probably DeepSeek, causes 600 million or billion drop in value for NVIDIA. So I guess first thing I would love to ask both of you, I guess maybe start with Rod. I see you unmute yourself. Is DeepSeek, why is it so special?
So, Max, you were saying this is like the news of the week. Potentially, it might go ahead and becoming the news of the year. So, I really see it a little bit as if a meteorite had hit Earth. That's where we stand right now. And
What?
you're saying,
That
you're
is
saying,
a big claim. We're just at the start of the year. Just saying.
it's been an eventful year indeed. But likely, so here, DeepSeek R1 will go ahead as when we look back at the end of the year, what were like the most relevant and impactful developments of 2025. DeepSeek R1 will be definitely among them. And why is that? There are a few things. Of course, there is, let's say, the geopolitical aspect, and we can go into that, but I will just limit myself for the technical one. In the technical one, it is that DeepSeek shown for the first time that actually you don't need humans involved in order to get better models. So historically it was with OpenAI models and so on, that you need some human involvement, say, hey, it's a good answer, it's a bad answer, model, you're going it in the wrong direction, you're going in the good direction. With DeepSeek R1, what happened was that it was completely done between, let's say, like a teacher model and a student model being this DeepSeek one. And therefore, it was not necessarily to have humans involved. Sure, there were humans coding, but not humans reviewing, assessing how good the answers are, providing new examples, helping the model get better.
Interesting. Chris, how about you from a non-technical side? Given Rod covers the technical side here, what is the implications of DeepSeek? What are your thoughts?
Honestly speaking, I mean, I'm currently doing a lot of hikes and trail runs. So I have a lot of time listening to a lot of different podcasts. And I feel like this is really the number one news that's currently happening. And there were already a lot of analysis. And I think what I find very interesting and funny is how people are trying to dissect DeepSeek. You're trying to figure out like where's really the trap here. Like it can't be true. Like that there must be some kind of mistake, or maybe the Chinese are cheating again. And indeed, I think the takeaway is it is legit, and it is also legit at the cost of 6 billion versus I think 100 billion for any other of these models. And I think the implication for me is to see how much fear there is actually right now in the market, given the backdrop of the geopolitical dynamics we see between the West and China. I think for what it's worth, there will, I mean, to a lot of people, this is maybe even very surprising that, oh my God, the Chinese have developed a model that is as good as the one from the West. And at the same time, I think this is something that is completely unsurprising. Someone will have figured out a better model. And I think it's really, really about the adoption of such a model and how users are actually going to use it in the future. And I think this is something that has not been figured out yet.
Yeah, I think Chris, I definitely agree on that. In a way, we're seeing a commoditization of the different models. We're seeing Alibaba from China also drop a new model claiming to be better than DeepSeek. Everyone from OpenAI down to Llama, down to Facebook, down to Google, they're all coming up with their own models. And I guess the distribution of it comes down to the trust of those models. I'd love to see how will that get adopted over time. I think based on based on some of the latest news, the implication other than, wiped out or some of the market value, My general sense is reading into all the different news so far, and also listen to Nassim Taleb. He recently gave an interview on Bloomberg. He said something along the line that a lot of people will come out and build the technology, right? Majority of innovators build the first set of technology, but a lot of the value are not actually captured by those early innovators. So it's the adoption and the ability to build something on top of it of value that gives the technology value. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that start to go on a little bit. I would say it start to develop a little bit. I think Rod, from your perspective as well, from a technical standpoint, you mentioned that, because it doesn't have that human bottleneck to it, it also has a huge cost implication to development of those models, right? And having built AI models yourself, right? How do you see that from a building perspective? How do you, I guess, weigh the trust issue, the cost itself, from building with the model?
With this, we have to differentiate between two things. One is going to the website and then working with the chatbot similar to ChatGPT, where here there might be some concerns that the data is hosted not in the US or Europe, but rather in China, Hong Kong, and similar. And therefore, depending on the industry, the company, there might be here some limitations why someone should not be using that. At the same time, this is an so-called open weight model, meaning anyone can go and just download it. It can live on your computer. It won't share any data to the outside world. And in fact, even for the most powerful model, the one that is really like on the level of anything that OpenAI has to offer, I've been seeing now quotes and estimations that you can build a machine, a device costing around $6,000. Basically, it's like on the gamer level, so computer that is able to run this model at its fullest capacity and capable of having like a decent level of output. So it will generate around 8 tokens per second, so meaning it will be, let's say, like a bit sluggish. However, you can actually do productive things with that. Just think about that, how now we can basically have at our own homes for only 6,000, while until now was limited to only OpenAI costing on the billions, so ballpark figure.
That's super interesting. It's almost like you take Bitcoin's code, download it on yourself, and then you run your own mining system. And now you could do the same with the AI models, where you just install it in your home and then try to install it.
And I think this really brings me back to our earlier conversation where we talked about China and China's approach to AI. And I think it is very remarkable, something to highlight, that DeepSeek's model is actually, in fact, open source. And you and I, we can like go on the website and download it, and really they're really tapping into the crowd intelligence to develop and get better at it. And I remember we were talking previously that China really has a different approach, because we were talking about the fact that they were building per vertical and per industry, and that within one industry, you actually have quite a bit of collaboration to collaborate on data sets for training, and to really make a powerful AI for example, the shipping industry or the banking industry. And now this is all coming together. I don't know. What do you guys think about it? Or Max, what do you think about that?
Yeah, what I find it quite ironic is that China went from the open source, because obviously China has always been, I would say, allegedly more centralized as compared to the West, right? The West has always been more distributed in a way, but somehow in the West, things are a little bit more concentrated with a few players, right? And when it comes to AI models, whereas China, yes, you have the bigger players that are coming in, but this DeepSeek basically came from a hedge fund. It's not even from one of the big tech. And the big tech are also building their own models. Question that I ask myself is, when will we get one here in the UK, for example, right? So we have a huge, hedge fund here called XDX Markets. I was like, man, I need to go hit them up. Maybe they should do something like that. The implications for me also shows the possibility for smaller players to compete. What I really like about this is that, it's not just about money and computing only. You have other ways to compete, which means smaller countries like the UK, like France, as long as you have the brain power, you should be able to build it. And that is super interesting, right? Where you provide, I would say, a fertile ground for innovation to grow. So that's really how I think about it, which means more opportunities for us to have more innovation in different countries, better pricing for, from economics perspective. Sorry, I could go on and on, but yeah, it is very, very exciting. Sorry, Rod.
No, I just want to ask you, Max. So you're both on the enterprise as well as the startup side, right? You have ears and eyes on both sides. How are you seeing it from the adoption side? Are companies already discussing how can we implement it? Are they looking at how can they benefit from it? Or the way around, they said, oh no, this is coming from maybe like a foreign adversary. We should not even touch it with a 10-pole. Let us stay where we are.
So from a model perspective, from DeepSeek perspective, I'm pretty sure a lot of the AI departments across different organizations would have looked at them because they're open source. This has because I'm in the financial services industry, historical standpoint, a lot of technology built within financial services are actually a derivative of open source software. Even when you go to like risk software, a lot of them are open source. They bring it in, they add their own thing on top of it. So from an AI model perspective, when it's fully open source and they can trust it, I believe it will be adapted over time. So that's one. Number two, from a adoption perspective, we're seeing use cases coming up within the bank, and they don't really care what models they use. They are actually more flexible than you think. From a commoditization of model, it really does not matter. It matters to them which one deliver the best result in the most cost-efficient way. Hence why I say the costing actually makes a big difference. Everyone is chasing growth in this part of the world. Growth comes from multiple ways, right? Number one, you grow more revenue, come out with more products. And then in order to do that, you need to do more innovation, more bets. The lower your cost of bets, the better it is for you to come up with more iteration. Therefore, chances of you hitting breakout successes is probably higher. So we're seeing a few of those implications coming down with, I would say, different organizations. In a few banks that I've seen and spoken to, was that they're trying to open up the capability to everyone within the bank to use it, for example. So that is interesting. Obviously, within safe guardrails.
Max, I actually really agree with you. And Rod, honestly speaking, what I was thinking is the implication of DeepSeek or the impact. It really depends on the audience or the counterpart, right? Because obviously we saw a major drop in the stock markets for anyone related to technology or semiconductors, right? Like, of course, for them it's really bad news because DeepSeek actually doesn't need the latest GPU chips, etc. So that's bad news. But then again, as you said, Max, for a lot of enterprises, actually it's not so important if you're using Gamma or Anthropic or ChatGPT or any of those. It's really more, do you get the job done or not? And for that, I think DeepSeek is just yet another model, and it's great for companies because, yes, maybe it's even more accurate for certain use cases. And at the same time, I think from a maybe research perspective or an innovator perspective, it is quite interesting how maybe given you had these limitations, all these, export restrictions, that actually made DeepSeek or China more creative to come up with ways of lowering costs and getting the same type of performance. And I think that is something worth mentioning. And last but not least, I think one thing that DeepSeek seemed to have been able to break is the limitation of data. Right? We talked about synthetic data before and how it actually makes the model worse. But apparently, DeepSeek has developed a type of evaluation and algorithm to self-learn. And I think that is something that is quite innovative. I don't know, Rod, if you picked up on it and you can explain this in a little bit more technological way.
So I mentioned earlier about this idea of having like a teacher model and a like student model where like the student one is learning, and some rumors or potential, so how it was developed, potentially it's not yet confirmed, is that there are some reports that the DeepSeek might have been using OpenAI, so the best models of OpenAI, such that the OpenAI model trains these like smaller, less smart, and so DeepSeek model. And on one side, that will go against the terms of service of OpenAI. Therefore, is not public and it's unclear. But some users have been reporting, and you see some screenshots online that you could ask the model, "Who are you?" And then the model will reply, "I'm a model developed by OpenAI." So then this will be like a hint that he actually, it was using the answers that were coming from OpenAI in order to get better. However, just developing this from a technical perspective, we say, hey, it was taken, so it was using the help from OpenAI, uh, and this was not approved. Of course, OpenAI will never support something like this. Even if we are assuming that, yet just the advances that were required to achieve this, to have something that is computationally stable, function, and to get the result that it does, is indeed remarkable. And here there are so many things that will happen. So here on one side, we were discussing now about so the value of the NVIDIA stock is still down. So since that happened, this has not recovered. So it's like minus 15% or something. So yeah, sure, it's still compared to like October of last year, still up. However, likely this means that one, we might be needing less GPUs, and also these GPUs might not need to be the top of the line, best breed of crop, and so on. And this pretty much like puts into question the whole model of how AI has been developed so far. Because just last week we were discussing about the Stargate initiative, 500 billion and so on. Well, now do we really need 500 billion? So sure, we need data centers, but we need to spend 500 billion on data centers.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the goal. I agree with you, Rod. I thought about this for a very, very brief period. Maybe it's just good to discuss it, right? It's not a full form thought. So if you want to build an AGI, then maybe you need a lot of computation. But you're building AI to solve like your daily problems, as Chris mentioned, you probably don't need the top end, right? There will be some things that are good enough that will get you the outcome that you want to get to. And also, if AGI do come, right, like we probably don't even have to work, really, right? You have one person to just run everything for the company. So then we have a different question from a social construct perspective. So I think I agree with you. The reaction from the market has always been a little bit like that. Like they just followed the herd, which I think everyone did the right thing to try to bet on certain things, double down on investments, etc. It's good for the world. But at the same time, sometimes there will be some exuberance. I remember I think listening to a podcast from I can't remember which who from DCVC, like the bubble thing is actually a feature, not a bug. It's something that everyone get excited about, everyone throw their energy in, and then something go crazy, and then it will pop, it will come back down, but eventually we'll get to where we want to get to. And I felt like the DeepSeek moment to kind of just show us their alternative ways of building models is super exciting. And I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about the application as well, right? So there's I guess a famous internet observer writer, Greg Eisenberg, I believe, and he has a Twitter post which is talking about how you know that people tend to condemn at the start of the Gen AI run, people condemn like ChatGPT wrappers in the sense that they are just really taking ChatGPT to do very specific function for very specific people. Turns out the way they've been doing that, at least from Greg's perspective, he argues that is actually the right way to go because you have direct distribution to a certain customers that you get to. You're solving a very specific problems for them, and the model at the back is commoditized, as I mentioned before. I just wanted to get both your thoughts around this, right? From an entrepreneur perspective, what are the I would say what are the things that they could take away from this? Is it to really understand your customer from a very deep perspective and then utilize AI really to solve that problem rather than thinking about building an AI technology? I don't know. It's a little bit of a leading question because obviously you see where I'm going to, but I'd love to get both your thoughts. Maybe I'll start with you, Chris.
I mean, I feel like we've also talked about that in the show before, right? It's all about the interface. It's all about, can you build something that people want to integrate into their day-to-day life, because that's really what you want. You want to own a real estate space on the phone of everyone's phone. You want to be the go-to place for maybe even starting a search. And can you build this type of interface to do that? That's really what it's going to be about, not necessarily what type of engine is going to run. It's basically like buying a car, right? It's you care about the color, the speed, and all of this, but you don't really care which company actually built the engine itself. It's a bit like that. So it's really about getting that layer right.
I think I would add to it, like Chris, I only care about going to A to B, right? I don't care if I sit in a car or sit on a motorcycle or sit, I don't know, just like this and transport me somewhere. But I totally agree with you.
True. Very true.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, it is that well, thinking from enterprise and adoption and so on, really, let's say this mode differentiator is on the people who are implementing this and the glue. Two things. One is just bringing this in an organization, because now we're talking about, let's say, like DeepSeek and so on. But how to make sure that this type of technology is being used on a day-to-day basis by the front line in an organization. It has really the trickle down, and this takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of resources. And this is really where the moat is. And many are saying, for example, consultancies of all type, IT consultancies, management consultants, and so on, are threatened by AI, because now basically an AI can do this level of analysis that any investment or management consultant analyst can do. However, all these consultancies, the top names, they have direct access to the CEO suite. They can always sell this. And it's really the moat. The moat is on the relationships that companies develop with their customers, point one and point two, in just connecting the systems. Because if we think of like a bank, how many legacy systems, databases, all type of applications that are like completely obscure and so on are around? This will not, let's say, just plug and play, install by itself, but there needs to be that people who are gluing that. And I would say that the moat, the advantage that companies have, is when they're able to provide this glue and they're capable of having this relationship with their customers.
Yeah. It's almost, I think I heard it on 20VC, whoever controls your distribution controls your life. So you want to make sure you have that direct distribution capability to some of the enterprise if you're selling to them. And I also agree, like having the knowledge. So a lot of I would say larger organizations will have one or two distinguished engineers. They're maintaining some really, really old mainframe. They're being paid super well, but you also can't get rid of them, because when you get rid of them, your system literally go down and your whole company go down. I think this presents an opportunity to somehow rethink how we deploy software from that perspective, because an AI could help you to get there from a transferable skills perspective. I think that's super exciting. I think. And with that, I know we're a little bit out on time. I have a few things I want to talk about, but we will be back again next week. So if you like what you hear this week, remember to like, subscribe, and you have any thoughts about DeepSeek or anything else, feel free to leave us some comments. And we're looking forward to doing this again next week. And let us know.